soon after asking, "Well, this is wonderful. I don't want to leave here. What's next?" I received a prompt response. When I asked, "What's next?" I got up and wandered around again, and what I would call a life review began playing out. With Factor's chef-crafted and dietitian-approved meals delivered to your house, you can prepare for tomorrow's bustling matrix life. A variety of selections are provided weekly to suit different lifestyles, including 35 keto, calorie-conscious, vegan, and vegetarian options. You can heat and enjoy restaurant-quality food in just 2 minutes with Factor. Smoothies, simple breakfast items, and snacks for mid-morning are all on the menu. Whereas takeout is expensive and unhealthy, every meal at Factor is both. Pick 6 to 18 meals a week and adjust the delivery time to fit your schedule. Enjoy a stress-free evening with Factor meals. Use the coupon OTHERSIDE50 to get 50% off at factormeals.com. A near-death experience I had in 2018 is the subject of today's post. My name is Deborah King. First, I want to share 2 spiritual experiences that I had prior to my NDE, which gave me a deeper appreciation for it. The year I was 17, I was involved in my first car accident. I was riding shotgun in my dad's car on my day off from school. In January 1972, we were stopped at a red signal intersection because my dad was hyper-aware of the folks who frequently ran the red light at that crossroads. He would wait for the light to turn green before looking in either direction. That did in fact occur. I don't remember doing anything after we sat there when the light turned green. The drunk driver slammed into us from all directions. In the passenger seat, I had unbuckled myself. We were terrible at fastening our seatbelts in the 70s. The vehicle lacked passive seatbelts and airbags. Fate, ultimately, because the truck slammed into us, destroying the passenger side of the car. I would have perished immediately had I been fastened to my seatbelt. That would have kept me from moving. I recall being above the crash site despite suffering numerous orthopedic injuries after being thrown nearly headfirst into the back seat. What I do remember is being at the red light. The next thing I remember is watching the wreck after I was out of my body. As I tried to make sense of the horrific accident scene, I saw my father's incredible survival. It had hurt him. However, he disembarked from the vehicle and dashed about, clutching his head. His speech was too loud for me to understand. Even though I was surrounded, I was aware of my surroundings and my body. My father was my biggest concern, even if I didn't comprehend it. I didn't want to worry him. I was keeping a close eye on everything. When I looked back, nothing made sense, but I knew it to be real. I woke up and went back to my body in an instant, but I couldn't tell you how much time had gone by. Where I lay, I saw shards of glass and blood. How had I been in such a horrific accident? "Oh, Debbie, thank God you're going to be okay," my father remarked as soon as I opened my eyes. My out-of-body experience was short and unsettling. Remember, I was 17 years old. For a long time, I thought I was dreaming or picturing things, even though everything seemed real to me, and it was. Would you tell me what I just saw? Since the phrase "out of body" was non-existent when it happened, I chose not to share it with anyone. I was a critical care nurse at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Maryland after moving from New York for nursing school. A man in his early 40s who was critically ill and suffered a cardiac arrest was resuscitated one night. Continuous resuscitation was a challenging and time-consuming process. Keeping his heart rate, blood pressure, and hemodynamics stable was a challenge. Reviving was a frustrating and taxing ordeal. The resuscitation was overseen by me that night in my role as charge nurse. The head resident and charge nurse executed the code. "You know, Deb, it's not really going very well. I think we should call it," the chief resident stated, his voice dripping with menacing meaning. When I heard those words, my intuitive comprehension was at its peak. The voice that spoke to me was telling me, No, you have to keep going. You're going to get him back. Didn't understand what it meant because there was nothing objective happening in the resuscitation chamber. It shocked me, to be honest. Before I could even think about it, I caught myself saying it. The resident gave me a disappointed look, winked, and then said, "All right, Deb, we'll go one more round." When I asked, "Can we just go one more round?" he came back. The resuscitation room was in a state of reverie. I was taken aback. Didn't believe it. I thought for a moment, well, it's a good thing you listened to that voice, whatever that voice was, because we got this man back, always keeping that in mind. The patient stabilized upon resuscitation, but did not regain consciousness. I had the following day off, and the day after that I had to work. He woke up, was doing fine, was no longer on a ventilator, and could communicate, according to what I was told. Entering his room was my eagerly anticipated moment, but his first words upon seeing me were, "Nurse, you're the one." I was taken aback and wondered what I had done wrong. He then explained, "I heard you. They wanted to give up on me. They wanted to stop, and you said, 'Let's go one more round.'" I couldn't believe it. "Well, you heard that?" I inquired. He responded, "Yeah." Watch the entire thing from right up there, gesturing towards the corner of the resuscitation chamber, which was positioned above the cardiac monitors. While out of my body in the car accident, I had the epiphany. I know what he's talking about. His words are absolutely accurate. Words were muted for me. I had a superficial and fleeting encounter. Yes, I was aware of that. I was convinced. Comparable event occurred to me. Nonetheless, I was skeptical after that initial meeting. In response to my question, "Well, what else did you see?" this patient went into vivid detail about what transpired in the resuscitation room, naming the medications we were administering, not by name, but in ampules, the paddles, and the anesthesiologist. Even my whereabouts were divulged. Though I kept it a secret, I recalled thinking, "Okay, I know what it's like to be out of my body, but this is on another level of detail." I proclaimed, "This changes everything. Please don't think I'm insane." The phrase near-death experience was not used by medical professionals until Moody's book was published. I didn't know about it. Trusted everything even though I had no idea what had transpired. Thus, I was able to transition out of acute care and into community-based services. In order to devote more time to patients and have meaningful conversations with them about their emotional and spiritual well-being, I choose to pursue clinical psychology after working for a while in hospice and community health. I had just begun my new job, and the program was rigorous. There was a tremendous stress wave in 2008, a year of financial despair. As a bank regulator, my husband was heavily involved in the banking crisis and traveled the country. The diagnosis of autism in my youngest bonus son was a devastating blow. He and our family had a tough time of it. There was constant pressure for me as a private practice therapist. Simply put, I am at a loss for words. In particular, I neglected my own needs in favor of those of others, including my father, with whom I was in the vehicle accident. That was the year my father passed away from pancreatic cancer. We were really close. Until he relocated in June, I was his principal caregiver. The winter season was upon us in December 2008. I experienced my first vacations apart from my dad. I was too tired and sad to go see his grave, but I really wanted to. His burial is adjacent to my mom's, and I drove 2 hours there and 2 hours back. On my own, my husband welcomed me into our home with the words, "Well, I'm glad you're home because it's getting dark. You really look very tired." Looking back, I could only recall a jumble of memories from long ago. Portion of this is still here. "You better go to bed early. I don't really like the way you look." I hung up my coat, put my purse down, and walked up the steps. Years later, Deb, that kind of freaked me out a little bit because I always was trying to get you to go to bed earlier and take better care of yourself, and you never really were very good at listening to that. So when you just automatically listened to me, it scared me a little bit. Told him, well, I'm going to read for a little bit and try to relax. It's been a very tough day. My heart really felt like it was breaking, literally. He sat down beside me and began to read, but after about 10 minutes he told me. I put my hands up to my head, said, "Oh, gee, Bob, I feel so dizzy," and I slumped over the boo. My husband is not a doctor. The fact that I taught him CPR is intriguing, considering I did the same for my entire family. Within my household, there was an unwillingness to give up. Although he suffered from heart problems, Dad lived with us. Heart conditions have been present in the husband's record. Helping children learn how to get to a hospital quickly was my top priority. Using the techniques I gave him to revive me was the last thing on my mind. As far as I am aware, this episode is not related to my cardiac history. A group of medics arrived at the house 10 minutes later and administered some basic CPR. The advanced cardiac life support team relied on their instincts and judgment to continue resuscitation, since it was not going well for me. I was brought back by their great efforts. I was sound asleep. That was an interesting analogy to make. Things were worse than they had been with my intensive care unit patient, since he didn't wake up for very long and remained in a coma. While in that coma, I had my near-death experience. I remember coming back to my body, but I don't remember when it began or ended. Still, it was a velvety black void from the start. I referred to it as nothingness because it felt like I was drifting aimlessly in a dark, limitless space. I can chuckle now that my sense of humor is still intact, despite thinking, "Okay, I think I'm dead." I remained unfazed. Nobody was scared. When a nurse has doubts about a patient's diagnosis, what should she do? Evaluation and medical examination. After telling myself, "Okay, I'm going to check. I'm going to check for my body," I checked my limbs, including my head, arms, and legs. Okay, no brains. Verify, no braces, no legs. Accurate assessment. You're lacking a body. Will I be scared by this? In fact, it's more like, wow, this is pretty cool. The realization that I was about to die made me laugh. I had departed from this world. I was unfazed by this. I didn't plan on staying for very long because after thinking, wow, what's next? I noticed that nobody was around. It was obvious to me that I was in a transitional or holding phase. Up next, I recall relocating. While floating and moving, I was completely disoriented. Since I imagined myself to be nothing more than awareness and light, I saw a tiny light emanating from within my mind. Only a little. Beautiful matrix of light pouring everywhere ensnared me as I entered a light spiderweb. The vibe was authentic. The matrix lights were souls, and I thought, wow, what is this place? I had no idea where I was. However, I soon recognized that this was just a phase. Why did I have this knowledge? Well, I just did. Usually did this when I was collecting data. Somehow, I was aware of these things and I just accepted them without question. From my past life in the real world, I recognized some spirits, but not their physical forms. Lights were spirits, and I was no longer in my body. Their energy was like a hallmark. It helped me identify them, as if every person were as special as a fingerprint or a snowflake. Some of them I might have known in a past life, and I could definitely identify them, but going back to a place I'd been before made me feel loved, needed, at home, and happy all over again. The Matrix's spirits and lights ensnared me in an enveloping web of love so powerful and intense that it was unlike anything I had ever felt before. I expressed my ideas and inquiries. Well, this is wonderful. I don't want to leave here. "What's next?" and I received prompt responses. When I asked, "What's next?" I got up and moved around once again. I saw fleeting glimpses of my past lives while reflecting on my life's journey. From what I can recall, these were really insignificant events. It was a small, seldom occurrence when I made a compassionate, loving, or possibly superior choice in my life. For these things, no one looked down on me. It seemed as if I were in the presence of these specters, God, and the divine. Despite my spiritual upbringing and Catholic upbringing, I failed to detect any religious persons in our interaction. Most of it was emotional, and my eyes weren't really seeing things. My spirit almost witnessed, yet it's hard to put into words. I had the impression that the divine and God accepted me just as I was. It was difficult for me to look at certain flashbacks from my life review. No one was looking at me funny, but I thought, "Oh my, I remember this one. Why did you choose that?" afterward. So that was one aspect of my life review. Astoundingly, while standing under the Matrix lights, I had fleeting glimpses of the lives of other souls in the Matrix who had my DNA. Looking at a few of these was difficult for me. While some of them were joyous occasions like births and celebrations, some were dreadful or abusive, and I felt for the other soul every step of the way. During my life review, I felt the presence of other souls. It was other people's ghosts, not my own, or maybe both. Several of the Matrix Spirit stories disturbed me. I told myself, don't look at the bad events. Look at the lights. Look at the souls. When that happened, I found the lights to be beautiful and radiant. It was those words that struck a chord with me. You see, nothing at all can harm the souls. The body can be harmed. The mind can be traumatized, but the soul remains immortal and intact. Nothing can ever destroy it. The teachings truly moved me, given that this encompassed not only those who had been victims of terrible acts, but also those who had committed such acts themselves. It was difficult to admit that I had experienced both victims and perpetrators. Nothing, however, could harm the soul, and everyone has the freedom to decide for themselves how to conduct their lives, as I was told quite explicitly. I said, "This is true." Realizing that this was spiritual reality, I resolved to remain and absorb all the knowledge I could at that very time. Earthly existence escaped my mind. Even though it sounds crazy, I was so in tune with my spirit that I told myself, well, I'm home, and once I'm here, I'm not leaving. So I forgot about my kids and my life. On further reflection, I became aware that I was receding from the broader matrix and that two light energies were drawing near. I was expecting them to converse with me, but I heard nothing. A one-on-one affair. I was overjoyed to see the first person who contacted me as the intensive care unit patient who 30 years ago recounted his terrifying near-death experience. His message, delivered with great enthusiasm, went something like this: "Well, don't be surprised. I'm here to tell you that when that experience happened to both of us, it happened for a reason. You kept that to yourself for many years, but now it's time to stop. You gotta share that because it can help a lot of people." My initial response was, "Well, that's great. I'm going to do that." However, I quickly came to the realization that maybe I should hold off on that. I was delighted to be in the company of my father, the second soul to speak with me. His response to my dad, "It's you," was priceless, was less surprised than mine. He seemed to know I'd be there, and made a point of being there. Added, "Well, I'm here. I have never truly accomplished anything. I may have departed this world physically, but my love for you knows no bounds. Please don't be scared to return to this task. I will never abandon you. You and I are inseparable. This haven of love and light is too big for one of us to leave. You embody it. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't escape it." Didn't understand what he meant, but I believed him. I would have believed my dad if he had said this. I remember thinking, well, I don't know how this happened, but this is not good. I was encouraged because I thought, well, this is not going well, so you don't have to go back in there, because that body isn't going to work. As I climbed out of the cloud of love and light, I found myself above the intensive care unit bed, where I could see my body hooked up to a ventilator, arterial lines, central lines, and other familiar pieces of equipment. Well, all right, I guess I can skip this. I'm in a coma, my pupils are sealed, I'm on a breathing machine, and it was obvious that I wasn't paying attention. It was at that moment that I felt sucked back into my body, and for the first time in my life I felt fear, suffering, and confinement. Suddenly, after existing in an infinite spiritual state, I found myself in this small physical body, where I was afflicted with pain, gasping for air, and terrified. I remember thinking, okay, somewhere around here must be an exit button. Oh well, that's not good. I thought as I abruptly withdrew my intravenous lines, tubes, and breathing tube, thinking, I've got to get back to where I was. In response to my laughter, the team hurried up to my bedside, as if they had seen a ghost, yet they politely said, "Are you able to breathe? You must be quite nice. If you're giving it some attention." I wondered, well, why are these people so upset? I'm great. Obviously, I'm breathing. Suffered a heart attack at home. The first 6 months to a year of rehabilitation were challenging because of anoxic brain injury. However, my near-death experience remained with me. It was easier to comprehend than what I had for breakfast or what one of my children said after I got well. I recorded my thoughts and feelings about it in a journal, but I refrained from discussing it for a long time. I believe there are many important things to remember, particularly for those of us working in healthcare. The term near-death experience did not exist when I had one in the 1970s with an intensive care unit patient. These days, they are not taught in our nurse educator, psychologist, or mental health care professional programs. We are making progress, but there is still a long way to go. It is important to listen to people, because these are real experiences. They are spiritually transformative, life-altering, and forever changing. We need to create a safe space, listen, validate, and learn from them. These can teach us a lot about healing, listening, and self-care in healthcare. Our healthcare system is facing challenges, particularly in the post-pandemic era, and there will be more, unfortunately. Patients are being overlooked. Another gift from my experience is the realization that our loved ones who have passed on are with us spiritually. They are as close as our next breath. I feel a connection to my father and others I've lost every day. They're here, leading and helping. Promise from the depths of my heart that we're never alone. We need all the spiritual support we can receive so our patients can help us. It is reasonable to assume that our loved ones are here with us because they missed their bodies, and we still deeply regret their passing in our physical lives. This is because we are spiritual beings, and the main thing I've learned is that we are not souls in bodies, but souls with bodies, not bodies with souls. We are primarily spiritual beings who inhabit bodies for a short time, and we likely incarnate into our physical forms multiple times throughout our lives.